Thanks for staying with us here on News Desk. Now let's go to the Ashanti region because health authorities there are distancing themselves from the laying state and burial of the father of popular musician Obo, who tested positive for coronavirus 2 months ago. Nana Bonsi Osei-Kufuor, who is also the chief of the Joaso Oyoko clan, was laid in state the weekend on the blind side of local authorities in what many say may be a breach of COVID-19 protocols. Though a positive case of COVID-19, the family transported the body from Accra, laid him in state and performed burial rites for him at the family house at Joaso in the Asante-Ache municipality of the Ashanti region. The regional health director, Dr. Emmanuel Tinkram, tells Love News that local COVID-19 teams were not notified of all of these activities. Love FM's Erastus Asaridonko has more in this report.
Obo's father, Nana Osei-Kufuor, who is also chief of the Oyoko clan of Joaso, was declared dead on March 27th this year at the Ridge Hospital in Accra after testing positive for COVID-19. 2 months after his death, his body was transported from Accra to Joaso, his hometown, at the weekend in a grand style. Yesterday marked the burial of the father of Bice Osei-Kufuor, popularly known as Obo, the past president of Musica. In an unusual burial protocol for COVID-positive cases in the Ashanti region, he was laid in state at his family house with mourners filing past. Family members kept vigil and performed burial rites before he was buried at the Royal Cemetery at Joaso. All this was done without the participation and knowledge of the regional and municipal health directorates. The regional health director, Dr. Emmanuel Tinkram, tells Love News regional COVID teams were not aware of the burial. Municipal Chief Executive for Asante-Ache South, Alexander Frimpong, denies knowledge of the burial. But Obo's family say they had permission from authorities. Agnes Esiama Boache is sister to the deceased. We were told he died of COVID-19. There were rumors that he has been cremated because of his COVID-19 status. Because he's a chief, we sought permission from authorities for few people to come around and identify and pay their last respects. We bought a coffin made of a glass covering, so it prevented people from getting into direct contact with the body. At Joaso, many doubt the positive COVID-19 status of Nana Osei-Kufuor, Obo's father.
I know Nana is not well before, so I don't believe that is that sickness of coronavirus, as they say, kills him. People who near him, they're not afraid because they know him and they know what caused it.
The musician Bice Osei-Kufuor himself will not immediately speak with Love News. Reporting for Joy News, Erastus Asaridonko, Kumasi.
Now, meanwhile, speaking on Beyond the Lockdown with MFAPAO last night, Information Minister Kujapon Kuma assured the Hip Life musician will face the law if organized, if it's found out that indeed he organized a funeral for his father without authorization.
This whole question of permission to bury his father will come in if indeed this person died of COVID-19 as established or as validated, and if indeed it is established that it was a COVID-19 related death, and the Ghana Health Service is supposed to be in charge of burials, then you can proceed on that assumption. As I sit before you now, I do not have any brief that says that Obo's father is validated to have been a COVID-19 related death. It will be possible to interrogate whether they did it in accordance with plan or any plan was breached. Now, the second thing is whether indeed there was a funeral, because what is allowed is private burials of not more than 25 persons. Is that what happened? I don't have the facts. I've been in a lot of meetings all over the weekend. I don't have those facts. So was it a private burial of not more than 25 persons, or did they have a funeral? If it was a private burial of not more than 25 persons, and as you were saying, it was under the supervision of the Ghana Health Service and the Accra Metropolitan Assembly, then there wouldn't be anything wrong. But if it was not a private burial of not more than 25 persons, and they proceeded to have a funeral will be in breach of the restrictions that have been imposed. So just to clarify, as I said before you, my office does not have a brief that says that this is a COVID-19 related death. You are informing me that you've had that confirmation. Second matter is the fact that what they are supposed to have is a private burial and not a funeral. If indeed what they had is a private burial of no more than 25 persons, then they should be fine. But if they proceeded to exceed those 25 persons, or they proceeded to have a funeral, then they will be in breach of the restrictions, and the security agencies will have to act accordingly.
And we stay on COVID-19. You know that the president has announced the easing of some restrictions, including religious gatherings. And we know that schools are also affected, final years, especially at the tertiary, secondary, and also the JHS level, will be heading back to school next week under some supervision and restrictions. Let's go to the phone lines now and speak to the president of NAGRAT, Angel Kabonu. He joins us. Thank you very much, sir, for your time here on Newsdesk. First of all, let me take your reaction to the announcement made by the president yesterday.
Well, when you look at developments that preceded the announcement, there was a suspicion that the president was going to ease some of the restrictions.
Yeah. Hello, Mr. Kabonu, we seem to be losing you along the line. If you can just position yourself again. Well, we seem to have lost Mr. Kabonu on the line. Let's go to Zoom now. We are joined by the chairman of the Pentecostal and Charismatic Union, Professor Frimpong Manso, Reverend Professor Frimpong Manso. Thank you very much, sir, for your time here on Newsdesk. Now, yesterday, the president announced that churches can resume some worship, except that you can do so with a limited congregation, 100, and within 1 hour. Are you able to do that? Hello, Prof. If you can hear me, thank you for joining us here on Newsdesk. I just want to find out from you what you make of the president's announcement that churches can resume some worship, however, with the limitations and restrictions of 100 congregation and up to an hour of worship. Well, apologies, there we seem to be having some challenges. We'll rectify that. But let's go into the phone lines. I think I have the president of NAGRAT back on the line. Mr. Kabonu, thank you for joining us again. You were making the point about the indicators leading to the announcement yesterday, the event leading to the announcement yesterday, which sort of gave credence to your suspicion that this was going to happen.
Yes. What I'm saying is that when we met the COVID-19 team and met the other stakeholders, we indicated that certain fundamental conditions have to be present in the schools before we think of reopening the schools. For example, we talked about the training of teachers and other staff to be able to handle a COVID-19 situation, or to even identify and know how to handle the situation. We talked about the issue to do with the various Veronica buckets, sanitizers, protective clothing, and the conducive environment, and so on and so forth. As we speak, I do not know whether those things will be made available in the schools before the Form 3 comes.
Did all of this come up in your meeting with the Ghana Education Service?
Yes.
Okay.
We made those suggestions, and we indicated that before we talk about calling any student back to school, those things should be made available. Now that the announcement is made, I do not understand the date that the students will be returning. Those items will be present in the schools.
Was it also your suggestion that only final years should be allowed back to school to finish the exam and wrap up the academic year for them?
When I listened to the president very well, I also heard that the Form 2 blue track are also supposed to be in school. And that was a little bit worrying to us, because then we are beginning to increase the numbers from only the final years to the blue track Form 2s. I would have expected that even we do not know how we were going to handle and deal with the final year students in relation to the COVID-19 situation. So why did we add for any group of Form 2 students to it, unless I did not hear well? If I heard well, then Form 2 Blue are supposed to join the final years to be in school, and I'm very worried about that.
Could it be because they were the ones in session when the coronavirus broke out here, and perhaps the thinking is that they should finish up and be at par with their colleagues who are on the other track?
Whatever it is, we are not in normal time. Whatever it is, we are managing a situation, the solution of which you and I do not even know very well. Whatever it is, we are gambling with ourselves, with our lives and the lives of the children. So because we are not in normal times, and it's an uncertain territory or terrain that we are getting ourselves into, we have to be very, very cautious when we expand the numbers, because even with the Form 3 students, we are not too sure how we're going to handle the numbers and whether even these attempts that we are making is going to be effective.
So you have up to the 15th, I think, to prepare. Have you started already, and are you teachers ready?
Well, for the teachers, the Ghanaian teacher is versatile, but the teacher, like any Ghanaian citizen, is apprehensive about the situation. The teacher is also scared about getting infected, either through his own colleagues or through students or whoever he or she comes in contact with. So that teacher is apprehensive. That teacher is not going to get the normal classroom environment or the school environment to do his or her work, because we do not know what the outcome will be as we proceed. That is where the situation is as I speak to you.
Do you have an end in sight? And I'm talking about for those who have to wrap up the academic year, for instance. When is all of this going to end? And has WAEC indicated that it is going to administer the exam for us?
Well, you know, the West Africa Examination Council is a regional, sub-regional organization. So I think the situation in the other 5 countries will influence the decision of West Africa Examination Council. However, I do not know whether Ghana is going to request the council to organize a local examination for us, which is done anyway. However, you see, the accounts have a saying that I hope I said it right. This is not the time for us to be talking about any side, because we don't even know what. Look, after we talk, from what the president said yesterday, our infection rate has got to about 8,000.
That's
and I'm sure whilst you and I are talking today, the numbers are increasing. So it is not. And then there are examples of Korea where they all reopened schools. Then there was a second wave of infection. They had to close down schools. In France, they reopened schools. There was a wave of new infection. They had to close down schools, and so on and so forth. So it is not a certain territory that we are wading ourselves into. Again, what happens to parents who are not too sure that their children cannot be allowed to go to school at this time? We also have to make a case here for those parents to have the right to keep their kids safe at home, and to such a time that they are very sure that their kids will not be pushed to harm's way.
Mr. Kabun, I want you to hold the line for me. We are joined by Professor Frimpong Manso, Reverend Professor Frimpong Manso. He joins us on Zoom. Prof, thank you very much for your time here on Newsdesk. The President says churches can resume worship. You only have a limitation of 100 congregants, but also within 1 hour. Is that something that you can deal with?
Thank you very much, and good morning to your listeners. Well, we are not in the normal times, as we all have been saying. It's a new normal. We would have loved to be in churches full, greeting one another, shaking one another, touching one another, dancing and jumping and clapping for hours. But the Bible says in, I think, 1 Chronicles 12:32, the children of Issachar understood the times. Because the time that we are in, we perfectly agree with the president. In fact, his address has answered 3 key questions or 3 key focus areas. That is our own safety and security, the security of the congregants, and the safety and the security of the nation. So as we go to church or we worship on Sunday, first we will fumigate or disinfect all churches. I have made a rule, personal rule, no mask, no entry. So we will wear the nose mask until the service is over, but make it a habit of wearing it now. Then observation of our social distances. That has brought about the multiple services and the limited number in services. We should at least observe 1 meter, sit 1 meter apart without greeting one another at all times, and finally enhance personal hygiene. So we are saying that we will use Veronica buckets at the entrance of the church. Of course, I'm also recommending thermometer guns. So Veronica buckets with running water, with soap, washing our hands, and of course using of sanitizers, throwing the tissue paper on the bin, and make sure that when you go to the church, you don't greet one another. Those who be using microphones, if they need be, use 1 microphone, don't change phones. And the service should be brief. People have been asking me whether we can do it for 1 hour. I say yes, it's amount to planning. Every enterprise based on planning will succeed. Because we are not in normal times, preach a short sermon, short worship, and announcement, make the service brief so that another people can get opportunity to come. The longer we stay in, we may forget ourselves and do the things that we are not supposed to do. So, because of the times that we are in, we will say that let us take it and see what the Lord will do. We are not in normal times.
Yes, we are not in normal times. The question, I guess, for many is, who comes at what time? Who comes first? How are you going to regulate that so that at every point in time you have 100 people in church, but also you want to be careful that you don't have people massing up outside the auditorium?
Yeah, that should show forth the skills of the church leaders. There may be multiple approach. People can use day bombs. Say those who were born on Monday, first service, Tuesday, second service, Thursday. Some people can say Monday and Tuesday, depending upon the size of the church. Others can use months of the year. All those who were born January, February, March, April. But most of the churches are very, very, very organized. So they know how to organize Sunday schools, attend funerals. I remember the church I was pastoring, we had team A, B, and C, even some of them up to E. So all these things have been pre-planned, and I know we will execute it, and Ghanaians will see how the church, the house of God, is so organized. You know, Jesus, when he was going to feed the multitude, told them to sit in groups, and the 5 loaves and 2 fishes were shared among them. We know how to do it, and the people of Ghanaians will see the best that we have. We will succeed.
Rev, I want to find out from you, are you ready for coming Sunday? Because some have suggested that if it's possible, churches can hold on and fashion this out properly so that once it rolls out, then you'll be in a position to control this and have a more effective and well-controlled service so that you observe all the protocols. Are you ready for Sunday?
We are more than ready. To use an American expression, we are overly ready.
Wow.
You know, we have been preparing and planning over 2 months because we knew one day we will go. The church coming on board can actually even enhance the monitoring and the implementation of all the protocols that will subdue COVID. I know that there may be 1 or 2 people who may do contrary, but generally, church members are law-abiding. Church, those people who are saying this are the same people who come to church. We are law-abiding, we are organized, the most disciplined entity in the society, and we will tell Ghanaians that we are of age.
And a very final one. A very final one, Prof. The issue about the children's service. How are you going to ensure social distancing among children?
Yeah.
Is this something that you can suspend for now, or there's a way to go around it?
3 questions come. Not only children. My stake has been older people, pregnant women, or people who are not very well should possibly stay at home. Okay. And if we can keep their children at home, it will be good. But some people are saying that we will not be there to control or direct or guide the children. So those who want to bring the children services, at least every 5 children, there should be 1 adult. And there should also be that social distancing. There are 2 scenarios. Either you bring the children into the main auditorium and sit close to their parents who can guard and watch them, or if you have a children's service, the ratios will be 1 to 5 so that they can monitor and take care of the children. And mind you, the service is not going to be long. So if the children service is well organized with few other things, possibly a television program for them to watch for 20 minutes, A, B, C, and D, it will come. I am optimistic. Sir Winston Churchill has said, pessimist sees opportunities in difficulties in opportunities, but optimist sees opportunities in difficulties. And being such an optimistic person, I believe we will succeed, the church will succeed, and Ghanaians will salute the church. Those who have not seen the structures of the church will possibly give us a salute when we have gone through this exercise. Let me say that Corona has come to stay. It will take time for us to go, and we should do everything possible to contain it and live with it for now.
I want to thank you very much, Reverend Professor Frimpong Manso. He is the chairman for the Pentecostal and Charismatic Council. Is Mr. Kabonu still with us on the line?
Yes.
Yes, your very final words as you prepare for next week, SHS students' final years, but also the other track of the senior high school students.
Yes, we will ask that the Form 2 students be taken out of the equation for now, so that we see how we can establish protocols and how we can adhere to those protocols for the final year students. Again, we should also give the freedom and the right of parents to decide whether they want their children to come to school or not. And those who decide that they don't want their children to come to school, we should be able to make allowances for them, and so that whenever they feel it is appropriate, they can let their children join the educational path for their children to go. Let us all move in such a way that it is life that we want to preserve here. It is life that matters here, and we all have to take decisions with cool heads.
Thank you very much. Angel Kabonu is president of NAGRAT. He joined us over the phone for his thoughts on the restrictions eased by the president and also the directive for final years to resume school and finish up the academic year. You had also Reverend Professor Frimpong Manso, who is chairman of the Pentecostal and Charismatic Council. Let's stay on COVID-19. Stigmatization is fast becoming a major challenge in the fight against the pandemic. Now, experts say this could have multiple consequences in various aspects of health beyond COVID-19. In light of this, the Mental Health Society of Ghana has launched an anti-stigmatization campaign to help address the challenges of mental health during the pandemic. Joining us via Zoom is the Executive Secretary of MESOC, Humphrey Kofi. Humphrey, thank you for for joining us. Now, first, what would be your assessment of mental health care within this period of the pandemic?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that we, as a country, had not prepared well enough to deal with the issues of mental health that were likely to come up as a result of the pandemic. Even as I speak to you, we still haven't done much because there are no medications in the facilities. If you go to the way forward now for mental health is to treat people within the communities. If you go to the polyclinics and other health facilities where we have psychiatric units, there are no medication. People go there and they can't get any better treatment. They don't have access to medicine. So what it is that much as this pandemic brings an overwhelming mental health challenge to either people who have contracted the pandemic or yet to contract, there are issues, underlying issues of mental health that has to be addressed to be able to get people prepared or to get people understand what are some of the nuances as this pandemic really affects many people across the country.
Now, let's talk about stigmatization and its impact on health, mental health. We know that stigma is fast becoming a challenge as far as COVID-19 is concerned. How has that impacted mental health within this period, and then what will be the likely consequence going forward?
Yeah, so this issue of stigma runs through our communities, and it is also because people are so ignorant about the pandemic and how it's really manifests. And the fact that people think that those who have contracted the pandemic or the COVID-19 are still not really treated because they have a little doubt of the fact that there are still underlying conditions related to the condition to the pandemic that are not really sorted out because there is no cure for it at the moment. It is important that we do a lot of education and awareness within the community because there is that correlation between mental health and then the pandemic. And therefore, if people have this understanding that, look, you cannot be cured or there's no way you have been cured, and therefore we should still isolate ourselves from you, then that is a problem because the post-pandemic consequences could be very dire. And I think that we need to step up the issues of trying to water down the effect of stigma and discrimination within the communities.
Well, what can we do? I know you have started a campaign. How is it going? And what are the measures you intend to put in place to help address this issue?
Well, so we're working with Star Ghana to be able to come up with fit for purpose messages that would go a long way to let people understand. Because first of all, we need to let people that understand that the fact that you are worried, the fact that you are scared, the fact that you are anxious, the fact that you think that per your underlying mental health condition, you stand the chance of getting infected with the condition, does not mean that life is ended or you are definitely going to get it. And therefore, if you even get it, it is possible that you still live a normal life without necessarily having any suicidal thoughts because of the stigma and discrimination associated with it. So there is more that we're doing in terms of community sensitization.
Very well. Thank you very much, Humphrey Kofi. He is the Executive Director of MEXOC, joining us on the impact of stigma on mental health care in the country. You're watching News Text with me, and let me bring you some more stories. Scientists at the Crop Research Institute of the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, CSIR, have confirmed apple tree, that's Malus domestica, at Etimetim Tabom in the Ashanti region. The apple tree, grown in a house, has numerous branches with few fruits after 2 years of planting. Plant physiologist and principal research scientist at the CSIR, Professor Beloved Mensah Jomeku, says there's nothing doubtful about the tree. JoyNews' Mahmoud Mohamed Nuruddin was at the site with the scientists and our reports.
If there is anything that...
If you take your matured apple, you have a single tiny seed in it. It's here.
First, the genesis.
My brother Edward Akwasi Fosu came to Ghana in 2003 to collect soil samples from different locations in the country, from different transitional zones, to go and see if apple can grow well in our soil.
It took 4 days for the seed to germinate in Ghanaian soil, when in other jurisdictions, germination occurred in a minimum of 10 days.
Initially, he brought 10 seedlings from Belgium. Immediately after planting, first 6 months, one of the fruits started fruiting. One of the plants started fruiting just after 6 months. But the fruits couldn't survive long because that time the tree was immature. The tree was not actually matured. It actually started fruiting. All the 10 fruits started fruiting in 2018. It also continued in 2019. The fruit also came out again. We started and it was doing very, very well. Then after that, 9 trees was cut down as part of the experiment. We left this one to see, without any treatment, how this tree can survive in this tropical Ghana here.
Plant physiologist and principal research scientist at Crop Research Institute, Professor Beloved Mensah Jomoku, says he has studied apple tree in Germany and that indeed it is an apple.
This is a real apple tree. I don't even need to subject it to identification because I've seen apple trees, apple plantations in Germany several times.
The leaves are about 0.2 millimeters in thickness and the fruits averagely 26.8 millimeters in diameter transversely and 18.0 millimeters thick longitudinally. According to Professor Jomoku, transverse and longitudinal sections through the immature fruits revealed all features of apple. Professor Jomoku concludes apples can grow well in Ghana, but it can only be done with a scientific support.
Yes, Ghana can grow apples. Earlier on, apple trees were found at Eburi, at Kwewu Mountains, at Amejofe in the Volta region. Because those areas experience temperate-like weather during the dry season. Very chilled one. Then the weather becomes chilled, and the apple trees go through chilling stress, after which they flower. And we can use science to change these ones to fit our environment. We are just going to take this one, subject it to stress over and over at the laboratory, at our station. Then by the time you realize, we've created what we call ecotype.
It will be able to withstand.
Thank you. Then it will produce fruits here.
A report by Mahmoud Mohamed Nuruddin.
Apples in Ghana. Let's see how it